What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Touchdowns to Home Runs. My name is Bernie. Thank you for joining us today on the Touchdowns to Home Runs show, the March Madness edition. Hope that your day is going absolutely fantastic. Now, for the first time in 2 years, an official March Madness bracket was released just yesterday in the 2021 selection show. I'm super excited to start picking my bracket, and I know a ton of people out there are as well. So today we're going to be going over, first of all, how I look and choose my sleeper teams, and then I'll give you 4 sleeper teams that I really like in this year's bracket. 2 of them are some that are already being talked about, and 2 of them are some ones that are not really being talked about. So hopefully I can give you some additional opinions. But anyways, let's get right into it. So what am I looking for in a March Madness sleeper? Well, first of all, we have to look at the historical seed percentages. Obviously, a 16 seed has only beat a 1 seed one time in history, and the closer that the seeds get together, the more likely that an upset is to happen, with the 9 seed actually beating the 8 seed more time than an 8 has beat the 9. So just keeping the seedings in mind. Next up is the conferences. A lot of the lower seeds, especially from the Big 10 and Big 12, are very talented teams. And even though their record doesn't necessarily reflect that, you have to take into consideration the strength of their schedule that they've played all year long. I'm particularly looking at a team like Texas Tech, teams like Maryland, Rutgers, teams that have played the hardest schedules really in all of college basketball, so their record isn't as great, and it doesn't really reflect how good and solid these teams actually are. Next up, coaches. Veteran coaches, especially in the early stages of March Madness, tend to be really successful. I'm looking at guys like Boeheim over at Syracuse. I'm also looking at guys like Roy Williams at North Carolina, Bill Self at Kansas. And coaches can sometimes give you that edge, especially in the early games of the March Madness, that these teams really need in these close matchups. Particularly looking at a guy like Bill Self, one of the best coaches in all of Division I basketball at scoring off of inbounds and scoring out of timeouts. And sort of coaches like that work a lot like special teams in football games, where, you know, special teams aren't necessarily going to get you a whole bunch of points, but they can definitely be the difference in some of those close games. Look out for the good coaches in the sleeper teams. And then fourth and finally, we have just look for the guy who is the best on the court, particularly looking at the solid veteran guards that some of these teams have. A lot of people like to count out the smaller conference teams who have really solid players because they think that they aren't transferable to the bigger games. But I'll tell you something, I'm a Michigan Wolverines fan, so our point guard Mike Smith was a transfer from Columbia and the Ivy League to now the most competitive conference in basketball in the Big Ten, and he did not disappoint. Even though a lot of these, really talented guys are playing in the smaller conferences, playing on the smaller teams, they are still really talented players for a reason. Look at them to potentially really boost their teams in the tournament and potentially provide some upsets here. But anyways, let's move on to the sleepers now. The first team that I have now is a really interesting team, and it's the Ohio Bobcats, coming into this March Madness tournament as a 13 seed in a really tough matchup against the 4th-ranked Virginia Cavaliers. But the Ohio Bobcats come into the March Madness with a 16-7 record and off of a very good week after winning the MAC this past weekend. I would have had a sleeper team from the MAC regardless, because I think it was a really deep conference, and a deeper conference than a lot of people give them credit for. In this week, into winning their championship, they beat a very solid Toledo team with Marion Jackson, the most talented player in the MAC conference, and then also Buffalo, another really talented team out of the MAC. When you look at the Ohio Bobcats, you're looking at a great scoring team with 5 double-digit scores and a great team at shooting the 3 ball. Their best player, Jason Preston, 16.6 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, and 7.2 assists. This kid is very good. But you look on the flip side of this matchup, and what really makes this a potential upset pick, you're talking about Virginia, who had to pull out of the ACC tournament due to getting bit by the pandemic. And ESPN reported yesterday in their selection show, and when they were breaking down the bracketology, that Virginia isn't going to Indianapolis until Friday, a day before their first game, in order to continue to quarantine. So again, you don't know when Virginia has been practicing. You also don't know who on Virginia actually got the virus. Both are which going to be factors on if Virginia is going to be at 100% and the Virginia that we know come this game. Look out for Ohio. Next up, we got another really interesting one, and this is Syracuse. A lot of people are going to be picking Syracuse, especially in their first round matchup and potentially to win a few games. You look at Syracuse, a number 11 seed in this March Madness, playing a very talented San Diego State team at number 6. Syracuse ended the season with a 16-9 record, lost in the ACC conference tournament to obviously a very good Virginia team before they got bit by the virus. But you look at Syracuse as a whole, and they check a lot of the boxes that we were talking about at the beginning of this video. You got a very talented coach in Jim Boeheim, a guy who's been, in this situation in the March Madness before. Not necessarily the most talented teams, but he knows how to get his teams ready, and I think Syracuse has a really good shot here. You also, when you're looking at Syracuse, don't necessarily have a veteran guard, but you have a very talented guard and a much improved guard since last year. An absolute sniper in Buddy Boeheim, averaging, I think, 17.1 points per game. Really improved in his ability to create his own shots, and especially in ball handling. And then Syracuse is one of the most active teams in the country. They're in the top 15 in both steals and blocks, 8.7 steals per game, 4.9 blocks. They're going to get teams to turn the ball over. Look out for Syracuse, particularly in this San Diego State matchup. Another one, BYU as a 6th seed. Now, BYU, you could say that they aren't necessarily a sleeper because they are as high as a 6, but this is definitely a sleeper to win a few games and potentially some upsets down the line. They'll be playing the winner of the play-in game of either Michigan State or UCLA. They have a 20-6 record, but don't let that record fool you because half of those losses did come to Gonzaga, obviously the number 1 ranked team in this year's March Madness, and a very close West Coast Conference Championship game where they were actually tied with Gonzaga within the 5-minute mark. Similar to sort of Syracuse, you look at BYU, they check a lot of the boxes. 3 senior guards, including 2 of their senior guards being their 2 leading scorers. You also got a very, very talented big in Matt Harms. You also look at the West Coast Conference and you say, well, BYU probably didn't play a lot of big games, but that's actually not true. Their out-of-conference schedule was very, very solid. Teams like USC, Boise State, St. John's, San Diego State, obviously Gonzaga, so some teams that are actually going to be in the tournament, and that's why BYU's adjusted KenPom ranking is actually 21 in the country. They're also a very good shooting team. They shoot the 3 ball at 37%. Again, look out for BYU to not only win their first round game, but make some noise down the line in the tournament. The final sleeper team we're going to be covering in this video, the Georgetown Hoyas, coming into this March Madness as a number 12 seed, going to be playing a very solid number 5 seed in Colorado. You look at Georgetown, 13-12 record, but won the Big East after a phenomenal week with wins against Creighton, Seton Hall, Villanova, also a win against Marquette in there. So you're talking about 2, upper seeds in this year's March Madness. The thing that you have to look about with Georgetown is, yes, they're one of the hottest teams right now in college basketball, but Georgetown's a team that lost a bunch of guys at the start of the year, and, they're a well-coached team, so my thoughts are that they're just figuring it out with the more experience, which is completely understandable. You also got a senior guard in Javon Blair, their team's leading scorer, 15.8 points per game, and just under both 4 rebounds and 4 assists per game as well. They're 11th in the country in rebounds, and you saw that in action against Creighton. Absolutely destroyed Creighton both on the boards and inside. Look for Georgetown to be some huge matchup problems for not only Colorado, but potentially, 2-3 games into the tournament as well. And then obviously Patrick Ewing as their head coach, a guy who's been here before as a player. He's done a great job as of late getting his players ready for the big games, and I don't expect that to be any different with Georgetown coming into this tournament and into this weekend with a ton of momentum. But anyways, guys, if you did make it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I want to hear who your sleepers are down in the comment section below and what direction you're sort of thinking of going on with your bracket this year. If you guys did enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to Touchdowns to Home Runs, and if you haven't already, make sure to check out the Bracketology that I did on the channel, and subscribe to Touchdowns to Home Runs for full coverage throughout this entire March Madness. Anyways, guys, again, if you did make it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.